mic wasn't on that whole time. Hey everybody, my name's Gardner. Welcome to Garden Sound 365. This is the show where we write music every day for a year. Today we're going to be talking about how to make funk. Now I've done funk before. I've done a video on funk before, but I haven't done a video in my newer style where I do a small amount of theory and I talk about the history of funk and what we can learn from that and then go from there and make a funk song. I think this newer style of video that I'm using is a little bit more accessible than my older style of videos. I know I've made a funk video before. It was called like how to make funk in 5 easy steps or something. But I have since learned studying other filmmakers on YouTube, studying other video guys. I think we've grown as a series. I think we've come a long way. I sure do. I think we've come a long way. Yes, we have. So based on what I've picked up from my friends and people I've played music with, as well as Wikipedia and some other music history texts, we know that funk gets its origins in the 1950s and 1960s, and particularly with Little Richard and James Brown. Now you might not think of Little Richard as a funk artist, and that's because he's not. He's actually an R&B artist. And if you think about it, R&B is where funk kind of gets its history and lineage. In fact, when James Brown talks about, he was influenced in order to make what he calls his funky style, he says, and credits Little Richard actually giving him the inspiration. That aside, let's talk about some music theory in funk. We have to look at bebop and we have to look at jazz theory in order to qualify funk. Okay, there we go. So if we look at a major chord, right, let's just look at a C major chord here. We've already talked about what a triad is, we've already talked about what the root, what the third, and what the fifth are. Alright, we've already gone over that in other videos. Today we're going to be focusing heavily on what's called a seventh and a ninth. So a seventh would be 7 diatonic pitches away, or an interval of a seventh from the root. So if C is our root, our seventh would either be B natural or B flat. Because again, we're talking about the pitch class, not the note. Now one of these is going to sound far more jazzy than the rest of them, so check this out. So here is C7 using a B natural. Now that's called a C major 7. The reason it's called a major 7 is because this is a major 7th. So what would happen if we added another note on top of that? Well, that would be called a ninth, and that sounds like this. That's a major ninth using all the white keys. So we're gonna have a lot of chords with sevenths and ninths in it. In fact, there's like a bluesy, funky kind of scale you can make out of that. You're gonna see a lot of use of the minor pentatonic scale. Now pentatonic, penta, 5. So there's 5 tones in this scale and it sounds like this. Okay, what else? That's just the harmonic, that's just the melodic. Here's the thing about funk. There isn't a shit ton of harmony and melody going on. In fact, the idea of funk was to reject that a little bit, to reject the jazz strictures and say, you know what? You guys are taking music, you're making it too strict, there's too many C7 add 9 chords and 6 4s, and I don't understand what any of this shit means. I just want to have a good time with music. And that's the core message of funk. And that's why I've been saving this video, because I have to be in a positive mood. You can't really force funk. And I don't mean to get metaphysical, I don't mean to get psychology involved, but listen, funk is about having a good time. You gotta be up, you gotta be in a positive mood. Think about it. James Brown, Bootsy Collins, Parliament Funkadelic, George Clinton. None of those bands' music's gonna put you in a bad mood. And there's a reason for that. You're supposed to have a good time with funk, and you're supposed to get in the groove. There's a term, groove. What the fuck does that mean? Groove is the core of funk, okay? If it doesn't groove, it ain't funk. The reason funk is the groove. It really rejects, like we just said, that harmonic, that melodic dogma that you associate with jazz, pushes that aside and says, instead, we're gonna focus on the rhythm section, the drums and the bass. What does that mean? And how can we get those two things to interlock? Well, what you do is you have this syncopation, this polyrhythm that exists between the drum and the bass. And you're also going to have a bass line that sort of fits into there and is behind the beat a little bit. Now, not behind the beat in terms of off of the beat, it's just gonna sit back in the pocket a little bit deeper than you're used to hearing a bass line. Like if you think about rock and roll music, like for instance, let's take a Jimmy Eat World song. That bass is gonna be sitting right on top of the drums. So if the drums are going The bass is going two, da 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 da. You know what I'm saying? It's right on top of the beat. It's not behind, it's not in front. With funk, you're gonna have the drums a little bit more syncopated, doing something like and the bass line is right behind it. And I know that probably sounds ridiculous, and I'm going to show you an example. In fact, let's stop fucking around and do that right now. Whoa, Gardner, you changed clothes. You gotta feel the funk, man. I feel funk more when I'm wearing pink, and that's just me. Listen, we're gonna need a really funky groove, and we need to be at a certain tempo. So I'm gonna slow this tempo down. I think we need to be around here. 90. Okay, good tempo. So we're gonna be at 90. We need a really funky groove. And I think maybe I might use a drum loop for this, because just to save a little bit of time. This is still actually a pretty square beat, and I mean by square I mean on the beat. This is a pretty square beat for a funk groove, but it's gonna serve my purpose here. Now, funk oftentimes will stay on one chord for the entire song. Not often do we even go to the dominant. With funk, you're most likely just gonna stay on one singular groove. 2, 3, here we go. Alright, there should be some stuff in there I can play around with. Alright, now we're gonna add some guitar. We're gonna kinda double the bass a little bit and riff off of it, alright? Remember we talked about minor pentatonic? We're gonna be playing a lot of that here. Now we need like a badass synthesizer line. 2, 3, 4, yeah! I'm resisting the urge to quantize things because it's just not gonna sound as groovy if I quantize, it'll sound square. Alright, now the next part is way easy, okay? Funk lyrics. Now if you look at examples like James Brown, like I've said before, what kind of lyrical content is in his video? Not a whole lot. He'll have a message for this song, which is usually about feeling pretty damn good. You gotta feel pretty damn good, and you gotta just kind of hype up the crowd. It's more or less being an MC. The way I do funk lyrics is I kind of just let the groove play out, and I grab my microphone and I dance around the room and I just keep saying things until something comes out. I'm not even joking. You wanna see?
Now my name is GARDNSOUND and I am your funk instructor, and I've come to teach you about the groove, and I've come to school all you busters. Now fellas, get up on your feet and grab your funky lady. I'm gonna get you all right and tight. I'm gonna get you in the groove. Here we go. I said hey, hey. I said whoa, whoa. I said hey. The left. I said, let me see your hands. I said, people, to the left. I said, let me see your hands. Over now to the right. People on the right. I said, let me see your hands. Hands up in the air. People on the right. I said, let me see your hands. Now I said, hey, hey, whoa, whoa. I said, hey. Now we gon' groove out of here, but don't forget, if you would like to support me on Patreon, stick around for the end card, where you can click on the Patreon button, and maybe I can actually play in front of the crowd instead of just in the studio like a fucking weirdo. Oh yeah, it's coming.